Hi, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid, Bot for short. I'm Edward Box. As you can see, I'm in my car, in a car park. Basically, I kind of checked into my phone about 10 o'clock, and my wife had sent me the link, the news that Denis Villeneuve has been announced as the director for Bond 26, or Bond number 1, if you think that it's actually the first Amazon one. In a lot of ways, I kind of see this as the way to go. This is kind of a clean slate and a way to start from scratch. So this is massive news, massive franchise news, that it's finally found a director. But I think what's also interesting is not only found a director, he's found a director that many people think is currently the best, well, one of the best, if not the best in the biz, with his handling of the Dune franchise, with the third film to come, what he did with Blade Runner 2049, his Oscar-nominated work for Arrival, his excellent work in the thriller Sicario, and Prisoners as well. Hugh Jackman's best ever performance. But you've actually tracked back. He did a couple of smaller films, and he did a film called Polytechnique in Canada, which I haven't seen, which is about a school massacre, which is supposed to be very good. And then his international breakout was a film called Incendies, which, if you've not seen it, check it out. It's somewhere on Amazon Prime. It's absolutely superb drama. That led him to Hollywood, and Prisoners, and onwards. So what we're going to get with this guy, amazing visuals, like beautiful compositions. I think, you know, you'd be looking at the sort of Sam Mendes Skyfall level of sort of cinematography. You know, the scenes in Skyfall where Bond has a fight in China, the entrance to Macau, things like that. That's really to get with Villeneuve, but up a notch. Incredible compositions, a great collaborative work with his composer and cinematographer, a guy called Greg Fraser, does the Dune film, so I suspect there's a good possibility he could be tapped for the film, as would Hans Zimmer coming back, who's done sterling work on the Dune films and did a great job on No Time to Die. He's great with actors. He's directed Amy Adams to a Oscar nomination. He's got a good performance with Emily Blunt, Benicio del Toro. His casting for the Dune film, his work with the casting director is excellent there. So, and of course, this will attract the top people. Obviously, the Bond film's always going to attract people to the franchise, but the fact that Villeneuve's directing, I think, is going to add, you know, another level to proceedings. So it's very, very exciting. He is doing Dune, the third Dune, in 2026. So as suspected, there will not be any movement on Bond until 2027. I think the earliest we'll see a Bond film is the summer or probably the winter of 2027, maybe 28. But what's good about this now is Denis Villeneuve can work on a Dune film, but be working on Bond as well. Starting to look at the casting process, starting to look at the script. I think the first thing they have obviously decided to do, the producers David Heyman and Amy Pascal, is to get the director, and then they can start to look at the script aspect. And obviously Villeneuve's a writer as well, so it may involve him. I know as well he's come in as kind of executive producer and bought his kind of team as well, which was probably part of the deal. So this is something that's changed in the Bond films, and this was before the Broccolis, you know, handed over the reins. Is that in the past they'd use what are called journeyman or hack directors, and I actually liked a lot of the work they did. But with the advent of the Craig era, once you got Casino Royale out of the way, they started to employ directors who hadn't done Bond films before. Mark Forster, but then getting Sam Mendes was a big change, a big shift in the consciousness, because you've got this Oscar-winning filmmaker with a distinct style and his own kind of crew he liked to use to come in and do Skyfall and Spectre. Then they would hire Danny Boyle, of course, another kind of auteur filmmaker, to a certain extent, to do No Time to Die. He dropped out, and then they got Carey Joy Funkanagua, who, although doesn't have a signature kind of type of film, he does write and produce a TV series in his own films. So this is a shift. So obviously, like David Heyman and Amy Pascal, who are the producers who were hired, that was the first big news, really. The first statement of intent that they hired the guy did Harry Potter and a woman who oversaw Bond at the when it was at Sony. They have obviously decided, right, we're going to build this from the ground up. We want the best in the biz. So the other directors who were linked with this, the names of Christopher Nolan was bandied around, Alfonso Cuarón, and Edgar Wright were principal. There was also talk maybe of Martin Campbell coming back to do, reboot Bond again after doing 2 excellent jobs. I think Martin Campbell would have been in the equation, but I think he's getting on a bit now. He's 80. You probably need someone a bit younger and vigorous. And since Casino Royale, he's had a run. He did a Green Lantern, and then he's just done a lot of kind of straight to kind of streaming action films. Although he did do a film called The Foreigner with Pierce Brosnan and Jackie Chan, it was good. Had some tense sequences. I think Campbell will always be one of my favourite Bond directors. Because of his really good cutting style and the way he stages action sequences. But that was in an era where they still had what I call a Bond team. Basically, after Casino Royale, there was a slow sort of move away from that and directors bringing in their own people. So that's really how the Bond films worked in the past. You had the journeyman director that'd come in with the Bond crew, Ken Adam, Ted Moore, cinematographer, the screenwriters and that, and it created this kind of really efficient family group, so to speak. The director could come in and do their thing. So you got directors kind of doing this big film where if you took them out of that, generally speaking, their films weren't popular, weren't anything like the size of Bond. And that's the way it was. The way it started with Terence Young, Guy Hamilton, journeyman directors, Peter Hunt, a one and done for Bond. Then Lewis Gilbert, probably Lewis Gilbert at the time he was signed in for You Only Live Twice, was probably the biggest director. He had quite a good track record there of critical acclaim and awards. Then later on, you had John Glenn, and John Glenn did 5 films in a row and was basically hired in continuum. He'd been the second unit director and editor, and his debut film was For Your Eyes Only, and pretty assured actually. John Glenn was good at building tension and handling action sequences, and although his Bond films aren't among the classics, I think time's been quite kind to them. So really what I'm saying is, in the past, Bond wasn't about the vision of a director. It was about the vision of Albert Broccoli putting all the money up on the screen and creating big mass entertainment. What's changed in the Craig era was bringing directors in who had writing skills, who had their own crews and so on, and would bring their touch to it. So what will Villeneuve bring? As I've said, he is a master visualist. He's someone who can build, images purely with sound. He has quite a lot of dialogue-less sequences. The characters in his films are often strong individuals, are quite isolated, and I think that's interesting. But I think one thing that tells me this hopefully will have some humour in it, but those of us, and I was kind of hoping for a bit of lightness coming back. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we live in a very, very serious world. I think this will be a serious Bond film. You're not going to get your Roger Moore quips. Now, if Edgar Wright had been signed as the director, I would suggest that they wanted to go on a lighter touch. And that frees it up for later on. Edgar Wright is a director who could come in and do a film. And I'd be interested to see that. But Villeneuve, in terms of action, he can stage big action scenes. And I would say, although Christopher Nolan, people always rave about him, and I really like Christopher Nolan, obviously, I don't think his action scenes are great. I think he does really inventive sequences, but his tempo and his pacing, for me, isn't quite as sharp as someone like Villeneuve's is when you look at what he does with Dune, particularly the last film. And of course, there's the great tension sequence, the traffic jam sequence in Sicario, which shows his kind of Hitchcockian ability to ramp up the tension. And I think that will pay off really well with this Bond. So I'm hoping we're going to get great action, we're going to get great visuals and great tension. And then comparing as well to Alfonso Cuarón, when that was first banded around, and Alfonso Cuarón does amazing long takes, but he's a little flashier. He, again, with things like his amazing long takes like in Children of Man, and so on, he draws attention to himself a little more, and I think he would have done great sequences, and obviously technically he did Gravity as well. He's a great technical filmmaker, but I just think Villeneuve, his style, potentially can imprint on it, but keep it Bondish, and I think that's what this is about. It's about rebuilding from the start. And it's Denis Villeneuve going, look, this is the template for the new James Bond. This is the style to go for and stretch out from for directors moving on from this. How many films he'll do, I don't know. I suspect he might just do one, but maybe the Amazon people are like, no, we want you to do 2 or 3. I was very pleased to read his patter in BBC. You know, he said he's a big fan, and this is the thing, there's a lot of film directors are big fans. Spielberg's a huge fan of Bond because they like the spectacle, they like you know, as filmmakers, they can imagine. It's like the Orson Welles quote, you know, it's the best train set. They're paraphrasing it, the best train set in history of Hollywood studio, or British studio in this sense, Pinewood. So directors like that, having all the tools at their disposal to kind of, you know, entertain the audience. What this will do for casting, obviously now, like, this is the second piece of the jigsaw. The first jigsaw piece was the producer. The second jigsaw is getting Villeneuve. The next part of it will be the script. Possibly Villeneuve might have a hand in scripting, story treatment. And then, but tying that in with casting Bond and deciding where to go. At the moment, I think it rules Henry Cavill out. My take has always been, if they wanted to do a safe bet, like, right, we're going to get a actor in to do Bond that people like and has been associated with Bond, Henry Cavill would be a safe bet, and he would just about make the age threshold of being 42, 43. But that meant he wouldn't have been able to do as many films. But more to the point, I think they are going to go for a younger actor. I think it's kind of a reboot, it's a reset, and you can actually go back possibly to where Bond is recruited. You know, he may not even, like before Casino Royale, they can start from year dot. And that Jack Lowden, Aaron Taylor-Johnson are 2 of the front runners there, I think. I think Jack Lowden would bring a lightness, a bit of humour to it. And he's very good in Slow Horses. Aaron Taylor-Johnson, he's got a bigger name. You know, he's physically impressive. He's got a lightness, a touch as well, a bit of comedy, and he's got a good pedigree. He's maybe getting too well known, Aaron Taylor-Johnson. There's this whole thing with the Amiga watch endorsement of people seeing that as a signpost that he might be Bond. But as a guy pointed out on the Bond Experience, I forget his name, really good channel if you go to that, he said maybe Omega were kind of jumping on the fact that he is associated with Bond and he'd be a really good endorsement. Then there's another actor called Aaron Pierre, who's done a voicing for Mustafa, and he was in a film called Rebel Ridge. So if you've not seen Rebel Ridge, check it out on Netflix. Now, he's a black British actor. So whether Bond would want to cast an actor of colour, that kind of idea in film seems to be a bit backlash about that. But this guy looks great. He's really charismatic. He's a unit. He's like, you know, if you'd looked at Idris in the past, you know, when he's younger, he's like that. He's got a massive imposing build, you know, he would kick ass. So, you know, if they decide to go that route with this guy, and there is rumours about that, don't fret, watch Rebel Ridge. He's really good. Yeah, I think they are the top choices, but you never know, someone can come from out of a left field that we don't know about. But I think with those actors I've just mentioned, they're all in their early 30s or maybe pushing 35, so the perfect age to do a big run of Bond films if they want. I actually think sometimes it's better to just be good to just do 3 films, you know. Once in that Bond actor's done 3 films, it can start to kind of dry up a bit. But I think they should try and not have these long gaps. I'm not saying they should do them every 2 years. I think that's probably too quick. But every 3 years would be a good shout. And the main thing is the scripts. I think the problem with the Broccoli's was sometimes they just don't have story ideas. They kind of finish the film and go, oh, what do we do next? And I think you need a pool of stories that can be dipped into ideas so you can get that script happening. So the gaps aren't as big as happened in the Craig era. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Suffice to say, as a Bond fan, I'm really chuffed. I think this is a statement of intent. James Bond's not going away. He's coming back, and I've hired the best guy in the business, the best filmmaker out there, in my opinion. Okay, cheers. Remember, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again.